Out My History is by John Agard, and I will be honest, this is probably my favourite poem. So there's part of me that's wishing you do get it because it's just such a beautiful poem and such a fantastically powerful poem. So it is a polemic text. It is showcasing a problem in society, and it's really quite blistering in its critique of the ignorance caused by colonisation. Agard has shown the ramifications of colonization, the fact that even him as a young man is being shaped by the views that black people are less good or inferior compared to their white counterparts. But also, I don't want it to just be seen as an angry critique. It's also a celebration of black historical figures, particularly black historical figures that have been ignored or have been ignored, particularly in the education system. Every single quotation, but we're going to look at the opening. Them tell me what them want to tell me. Bandage up me eye with me own history, blind me to my own identity. What a beautiful opening. Let's have a look. So first of all, I want you to consider it a repetition of them tell me. It becomes almost a refrain. And I've said that the notion of division is instantly introduced, with them being the creolized version of them, and it's them, those in power, the educators, the government, those in the high echelons of society who are creating this oppressive kind of this oppressive feeling towards Agard and other black people. The use of patois can be argued and interpreted as a means for Agard to refuse any ideas of Eurocentricity. He is showing that the language of patois is as beautiful, as intellectually complex as standard English, and he's refusing to be speaking in the form of the kind of oppressors that he is so much rallying against. Dem is meant to be the oppressive figures who mandate how people are meant to think. I want us to look at the idea of bandage because bandage seems to be associated with covering. Also, bandages are often used to cover wounds, so maybe Agard is exposing that the wounds, and these are metaphorical wounds, have been caused by colonization. I think that's quite a beautiful way of looking at it. Bandage could also be metaphorical for the hurt that racialized oppression has caused, not only for him, but for the others as well. And blind, I've said, can be a reference to the myopic mindset that Eurocentricity breeds. Because of Eurocentricity and the effects of colonization, the ideas of superiority and inferiority is very much set. And Agard here is kind of rallying against this. Also, I want you to consider the place of B sounds. It's almost as if Agard has been attacked by the racist attitudes of some. So there is so much you can say just about those opening lines. You don't need to remember all of it, but certainly so much you can say. Now, as I said previously, Agard doesn't only critique Eurocentricity, he also decides to celebrate Black historical figures, and he picks three in particular whose works have been absolutely fundamental to the world. However, they have often been ignored in the historical curriculums of European schools, essentially. So the first one is Toussaint de Beacon of the Haitian Revolution, who essentially fought against the oppressive French rule and created the rebellion and the first revolution. The firewoman struggle is for Nanny de the Maroon, who was a freedom fighter in Jamaica who helped free over thousands of slaves. And a healing star is Mary Seacole, who often gets ignored, especially in comparison to her white counterpart, Florence Nightingale, known as the Lady of the Lamp. Mary Seacole's attributes and the work that she put in during that time and the medical work she put in has often been ignored in history books. And he chooses these three to kind of shed that light metaphorically on the amazing works that they have done. Now, I've said shed a light a few times. What you may notice is Beacon, Firewoman, and Healing Star. All three historical figures are referenced with light. I'm going to say why. Well, the reason why is to show how they've all provided light, both emotionally, to many of the people who've struggled with oppression. The light could also present how they've enlightened Agard and how through them, he's now enlightening the readers. So it's a very hopeful image. Now, this idea, first of all, we're going to go a little bit more and zoom into a few more ideas. So I want us to get this idea of beacon. And it's almost like Toussaint's courage and what he did there. And if you read the full poem, it talks about how he looked back and he really there's a real excitement to the discussion around Toussaint. But Toussaint's rebellious spirit is almost now being within Agard himself. That Agard is carrying Toussaint's rebellious spirit and now creating a new rebellion. But rather than a rebellion of freeing people from slavery, he's freeing them from mental slavery and from the oppression that Eurocentricity has caused them. The firewoman struggle, this idea of fire and the passion. And again, I'm going to suggest that maybe Agard here is suggesting that the fire that she had is now the fire, the passion that is burning within him, to again go against the mental captivity that we've been placed in as Black people, and of people who've been enslaved, or people whose ancestors have been enslaved, showing that colonization didn't just affect those who were enslaved, but is also affecting many generations to come. And a healing star. And I think particularly the word healing. It's almost like Seacole herself not only healed many physically through her work as a nurse, but she's also healing Agard as well. And he hopes to heal himself. And you can also link that to this idea of him being bandaged at the beginning, but he's now being healed by the memory and the wonder and the work of Mary Seacole. Right, we're simply going to look at the ending here, okay? But now I'm checking out my own history, I'm carving out me identity. I want us to look at this final moment because I think it encapsulates so much about what the poem is about. So the final image is one of defiance. He once again refuses to adhere to the rules here. He is not speaking in standard English, he speaks to patois to the very end. And I think this is very deliberate because again, he's reaffirming that the language of patois is as rich, as intellectually complex, and as wonderful as standard English. He's also celebrating his own culture through the beautiful and wondrous language of patois. Carving is a verb and it's very deliberate, and I think it does have some quite obviously violent connotations. What I think here though is that Agard is almost again kind of making a comment against stereotypes of Black men, particularly Black men being seen as aggressive in the media. Here he's using a term that may be seen as violent, however he's subverting it because his weapon of choice is not anything violent, it's not his fist, it's not a weapon. Instead, his weapon of choice is purely his artistic expression, his intellect, his pride in his culture, and the beauty and wonder of poetry. Own. I love this pronoun because it's again showing Agard's autonomy, okay? Dem tell me at the beginning, but now he's checking out me own history. So you can consider the journey, the trajectory of the speaker across the kind of the lines and the stanzas of this poem, when now Agard essentially has now reaffirmed who he is and he knows who he is and he's carving out his own experiences. Now, the final word of the poem being identity means that the poem's message becomes even more pronounced. And this would be a fantastic poem if it came up for an identity question. It's a great one to use for any comparisons and could be used with the emigre, for instance. I also feel that Agard is galvanizing the reader to take ownership of their own identity and to kind of reaffirm his own beliefs. Well, that is the end of this, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and please get to using it to writing a fantastic essay on John Agard's Checking Out My History.